First off, I want to say a big thank you to the host and the hostess for having us in their home. Thank you for having us. Thank you for the food. Thank you for the drinks. One of the things that we're going to learn tonight is that Torah brings peace. And so to have Torah in your home is a very fast, activating way to bring peace into your home. And we're going to speak about why it works like that. So first of all, a big thanks to you guys. It's also Rosh Chodesh Nissan. This is the beginning of the year according to one opinion. Most people know that Rosh Hashanah is the beginning of the year, but not everybody knows that it's actually machloket. One opinion says Rosh Hashanah is Tishrei, which is how we paskin halachically. However, there's another opinion which is actually equally valid. They're both true. And that is that we start the year right now. We're starting over again right now. This also happens to be the birthday of the person who is the biggest influence in my life. Someone who has saved me from mental health crisis, distress, suffering, which is hard to explain or even to fathom. He's brought me unbelievable joy and life force and hope and faith. It says in the Midrash that there's 7 names of Moshe. One of the names is Yekutiel. Why? Because he makes every Jew hope. And Rabbi Nachman brought me hope. And because of that, I'm alive, and I'm here now with you guys, which thank God. So this is Rabbi Nachman's birthday. So Bezrat Hashem, we should all be mekasher to the tzaddik and to draw down the light and the love and the unity which he fought his whole life to give to us. There's nothing that he wanted more than to help each and every one of us. And if you learn Rabbi Nachman's teachings, you see very clearly that he wasn't speaking about 1800, he was speaking about right now, for us. In fact, Rabbi Nachman once said, I didn't come to this world for the same reasons you guys do. I came only to help you guys. That's it. So Bezrat Hashem, hopefully I can give over some of the things that he has helped me with, and one of the main things he's helped me with is Shalom Bayit. So I just want to give a little bit of an introduction. I'm married to a Yemenite, Israeli, Sephardic girl. She grew up modern Orthodox, Dati Lumi. Her parents got divorced when she was very young. It was a very bad divorce. And the mother and the stepfather had the daughters testify that they don't want to see their father anymore. And there was actually a period of time where my wife legally wasn't able to see her father. And her father actually, it sounds like something from the movies. You know, every time she tells me the story, which is very rare because my wife is not nearly as expressive as I am, I cry because it really sounds like some movie. You know, it's like something crazy. But he used to drive up to her school and just watch from outside like Mordechai used to watch on Esther. Because he wasn't able to actually see her, and every day he would just drive up and sit and watch outside and see his daughters come out of the school. And miraculous chain of events happened where eventually my wife reached out to her father in secret, and she was having some problems at home. She ran away from home. She ran into her dad's home, and she proceeded to live with him. My wife's family stopped speaking to her for a period of time because they were so mad at her. And she got to realize that her dad's actually an amazing person. But as everybody knows, the experiences you have as a child, you know, I used to be a mental health therapist and a social worker and a substance abuse counselor and whatever else. And one of the main things that they speak about is core beliefs. That when you're a child, the beliefs that you are either given explicitly or just as impactful, the ones that you're getting implicitly just from your experience at home, especially in your home, they shape the way that you look at the world, right? You see the world through the prism of your family. And when you try and alter that, or you try and elevate from that, as you're older, it's very, very, very difficult. And if you don't have not only the ratzon, the will, but the actual wisdom of how to do that, then it's almost impossible. Okay? So one of the big things that Rabbi Nachman is coming to do is to tell you, Ein shum yeyush ba'olam klal. There's no such thing as despair in the world at all. That means that if you don't have shalom bayit, and you haven't had since you got married, like probably the first 5 years of my relationship with my wife. So you might think to yourself, it's impossible that after tonight, my relationship's gonna get significantly better. But that's called yeyush. That's called despair. And if you look in the Torah is the source of everything. How many times does the word yeyush come up in the Torah? 0. Why not? Ein shum yeyush ba'olam klal, because it doesn't exist. There's no such thing as despair. If you look in Mordechai and Haman, we're just coming off Purim. Rabbi Nachman says that Purim is the beginning of Pesach. It's not like two separate things, but the way to experience the open miracles of Pesach is through the concealed miracles of Purim. If you look, it says about Haman when he's introduced, Ve Ish, and the man, but when it speaks about Mordechai, it says the Ish Yehudi, right? Everyone knows. So one of the perushim on this is that if you look at the letters Ve'ish and you flip the letters around, it spells Yeyush. That the entire effort of Haman is to get you to lose belief. To lose belief in yourself, to lose belief in Hashem, to lose belief that things can change, that things can get better. His whole entire effort is to get you to stop believing that things can change, that things are changing and they will change, and everything is for the best. Mordechai is Ish Yehudi. Why Ish Yehudi? Anyone want to guess where I'm going with this one? Ish.
Hot.
What did you say?
Hot.
Hot?
In his Yehudi.
Okay, good. Yeah, why is he a Yehudi? Very good. Why is he a Yehudi? Because he's Ish. Why Ish? Ish.
He has fire in him.
You have an Aleph, you have a Yud, you have a Shin. Ein Shum Yeyush. Okay? So what does Mordechai represent? What is the tzaddik coming to do in our life? To tell you the opposite. There is hope. Everything can change, and like Rabbi Nachman said, that you could be going through trials and tribulations that are unthinkable, unfathomable, and you could be going through them for a very, very, very long time. And literally in one moment, everything can flip for the very best. And your ability to experience that is preceded by a belief in that reality. People say, when I see it, I'll believe it. Rabbi Nachman says, when you believe it, you'll see it. And the ikr, the essence of a Jew, is his emunah. This is why Rabbi Nachman says, Torah is great. The mitzvot are amazing. All of these things are so vital and so important. But guess what? The ikar, the essence, is faith. The entire Torah is built on faith. This is the reason why the Torah starts with Bereshit. Like Rashi says in the beginning, why do we need to start with this? I believe the Torah is true. Just tell me the first mitzvah. So the Torah is not coming to assume that you believe the Torah is true. It's founding the entire thing on one statement of faith, that Hashem created the world from nothing. Hashem created something from nothing. Why is that the beginning of the Torah? Because that's the beginning of everything new in your life. You have to believe that no matter what my life is, Hashem can take this nothingness and turn it into something totally different. And if you don't believe that, then the rest of the Torah is going to fall on deaf ears. Because it's all built on this, on Amunah. Okay, good. Now, I myself, as opposed to my wife, am Ashkenazi. I grew up secular. I didn't know what Torah Tefillin was till I was 24 years old. I was a self-proclaimed atheist my whole life. And I was religious about it. Just as religious, I don't know, just as religious, but pretty closely religious as I am now, just in a totally opposite fashion. And when me and my wife met, that was the beginning. Okay, so if you can imagine American, secular, Western, liberal meets Sephardi, religious, Amun is pumping in her veins, she's loves the land of Israel, doesn't understand why Jews live in America, and the list goes on and on and on. And now we're coming together, and what's bringing us together? Love, love, love. You know that song by the Beatles? Love is all you need. But guess what? It's not. It is very important, but it's not all you need. Otherwise, John Lennon wouldn't have had a relationship with his daughter. Because love is not all you need. You need more than that. What do you need that's more than that? So now I want to bring you into a very old time, an ancient time. Rabbi Nachman used to say that my path is something brand new and yet it's ancient. It's a path that our ancestors walk and it's never been walked before. What does Rabbi Nachman mean by that? We're going to have to take a few shots to figure that one out because that's a very difficult statement. But I think what it means is the older you go back, the newer it can make your life. Okay? In the beginning of creation, when Hashem created the world, according to Kabbalah, before the world came into existence, Hashem made these things called sfirot. Sfirot are the mechanisms that Hashem uses to reflect his light into the world and to create it. Okay? Why are there these things called sfirot? Because Hashem's light is infinite. How does Hashem, who is infinite, relate to a finite entity? He needs to have some type of filter, right? It's not just a new Haredi invention. Filters were the first invention of creation. To filter Hashem's light so that it's not too intense for us to experience. Because we're all thinking to ourselves, man, I would just love Hashem showed himself to me, right? Like he spoke to Avram, he said, Lechecha. Wouldn't you love to hear that? You would stop everything in your life and do whatever Hashem says, but we never heard that before. So, what are we going to do, right? However, it's not always as exciting as it sounds. It's not always as enjoyable as it sounds because Hashem's light is infinite. And so for us to connect, he needs to conceal himself to an extent, which is the reason why we say Melech HaOlam. The word Olam comes from the Shoresh, which means Elam, which means hidden. He hides himself through the means of this world. This world is his clothing, so to speak. It's the structure on which we could actually have a relationship with him. You know, to have like a crude analogy, you guys are all wearing clothes right now, thank God, this is a religious event. But if for some reason you went home tonight and someone creepy were to come into your house and steal all your clothes, so you wouldn't go to work tomorrow, why not? It's just clothes. You can replace them, you can buy them on Amazon, they're literally the least important, least vital, least essential part of you, and yet you can't leave your house without them.
A lot of people here work from home though.
Oh. Still, when you get on your Skype or you get on your, yeah? Okay. But you need clothes to interact with other people. Why?
Too much.
It's too much. It's too much. Why is it too much? Because this is actually a paradigm for a person's essence being too much for another to experience. And in order to have a good relationship, a peaceful relationship, a harmonious relationship, you need to be able to create a filter, a concealment of yourself. It doesn't have to be a full concealment of yourself, but you need to enclose yourself in something to decrease the intensity of it. It's right, like, you know, when I first started dating and I started telling them about all my problems, and then that was the last date. I didn't realize at the time, girls don't want to hear about all your problems on your first date. I just watched a lot of movies growing up. I'm like, oh, we're going to connect and I'm going to tell you about all this stuff I went through. And they're like, get me out of here, you know? So I didn't know that. So I had to, you know, put on garments, pretend for a while, and then slowly, hey, this happened to me. My dad did this, my mom did, you know, but weeks, months, years, and then as time goes on, right? Those are all garments. Why do we need garments? Because Hashem needs garments. And we are Tzelem Elokim, a reflection of Hashem. What are those garments? They're these 10 garments called Sfirot, okay? Now, the Arizal, the great Mekubal, who Rabbi Nachman gets a lot of his teachings from, he brings a great chidush, that in the beginning, these 10 Sfirot that Hashem used to create the world, that he shone his infinite light through, and then it was decreased and minimized and concentrated until it was the perfect amount for this world. They were all initially made like this, in a straight line. So I know obviously this is before the physical world, so just please don't take anything I'm saying literally, but it is all real. How that makes sense? You gotta do a lot of hibodit on that, okay? But Hashem puts light in through these sfirot. What happens? The Arizal says something called shvirat hakelim, a breaking of the vessels. Hashem shines his light down through these vessels and they all shatter. Now a person is going to ask themselves why the very first thing that Hashem did, he made broken. If we're saying Hashem is God, we're saying he's perfect, right? These are all fundamentals of Torah. So very easily you could pick a hole in this whole theory of the Arizal that this happened, because how could it be the very first thing Hashem did is he made these faulty items which he created the world with? Doesn't make any sense. The answer is that there's two stages to everything. There's breaking and then there's fixing. It works like that in Shalom Bayit. It works like that in your emunah in Hashem. It works like that in your own inner psychological life. There's always a breaking which precedes fixing. Like Rabbi Nachman once said, if you believe you can break, you must believe you can fix. Where do we get that from? Because that's the initial paradigm of existence. Hashem created these 10 sfirot, he shone his light through them, and they broke. Okay? Now this is very important. These sfirot did not break because there was no light. It's because it was too much light. Something that the Arizal calls ribui or. Okay. What is light? Rabbi Nachman teaches that light is chokhmah, it's wisdom. It's your thoughts. The way that you think about things, the way that you look at the world. Did you ever notice that the majority of the fights that you have with your spouse, not that you guys have ever had any, but if you've ever had any, they usually come because one of you feels very strongly this way and the other one feels very strongly this way. What is that called? That's your light. That's your wisdom, right? But if the vessels are not made the right way, then the light actually breaks the vessels. What did Hashem do after these vessels broke? He reconstituted them. And this is the essence of today's class. And this is what we're going to spend the entirety of the class discussing. And in here, I will tell you all of Rabbi Nachman's secrets to have not just a decent relationship, not just a good relationship, but mamish. It will be the thing that you're more proud of, that you're more excited about, that you're more convicted on than anything else. Thank you so much. Okay? So here we go. After these vessels broke, Hashem reconstituted them in 3 lines. So we start with this highest one. This is called Keter. Okay, which means crown. I'm going to tell you why these things are important. I'm not trying to waste time here, but it's important. Okay? Then he made one here called Chokhmah. And then he made one over here called Bina. Here we have a quasi-sphera. It's called Da'at. Over here we have another one. It's called Chesed. Here we have another. It's called Gevura. We have another one here. It's called Tiferet. We have a few more. Netzach. Hod. Yesod. Malchut. Very good. You guys are all Kabbalists, I can say. Perfect. It's the right crowd. Sorry for my handwriting. Okay, can anybody tell me any differences from this than the original? Because just so you know, in the original, those 10 in the beginning were the same exact sfirot. No different, except they were in what type of line? Straight line. Any other differences you see?
These are all dispersed.
These are all dispersed. Okay, very good. Anything else?
There's 3 levels.
There's 3 levels. Okay, good.
You throw another one in there, it's like 11 here?
Yeah, so this is a quasi-sphere. We're going to speak about it, but it's important for the class. Okay?
They're all the same distance from each other.
They're all the same distance from each other. Very good. Beautiful. Very important. Anything else? Okay, you guys did good. Ready? Hashem reconstituted these same sfirot in 3 lines. In Kabbalah, this line, the right line, it's right. You just got to flip it around. In Kabbalah, this is called the male line. This left side is called the female line. This middle line is called shalom. Okay. Good. Now, first thing that we need to say is that Judaism is not misogynistic. Because we see from here that men and women are equal. In fact, Rabbi Nachman teaches the Geula is going to only take place when male and female are equal. And that means a lot of things. But the important point for tonight is like this. Every single man who's sitting at this table, his soul is rooted in this right line. And every woman who's sitting at this table, her soul is rooted in this left line. Now, can anybody tell me if your best friends are similar to your spouse? You say no. Who else?
No, mine are.
Yours are?
No.
No. Your band buddies, are they similar to your wife? No. Okay, what about you? No friends. It's okay.
I was going to say, the line is, my best friend is my wife.
No, don't do the line. You guys are not going to have any more shalom bayit. We got to really work at it. It takes a lot of hard
Well,
work.
who needs friends when you got your wife?
Oh, okay, very good. Okay, well, I'm your friend now. And I'm probably different than your wife. I have to imagine. Anybody else?
I think there's qualities. Some qualities are the same,
Otherwise what?
because there's certain things you like about people.
Okay,
So you're drawn to those qualities.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah?
But
People I
not the
gravitate
same.
to are like.
I don't know what these.
People you gravitate to are like you.
Similar.
And
Yeah.
similar worldview.
Similar worldviews.
Zionist.
Right.
People care about people.
Right.
Try to do
Your wife's
good.
accents. She does as well?
Some. A narrower range than I would like, but she's working on it. Yeah.
Okay, in general, my experience has been in my years as being a teacher, in my years as being a therapist and doing couples therapy, in my own personal life, and the list goes on and on. For the most part, people's spouses are very different than them, even though they share something which is connecting them, which is why they came together. And people's friends are almost exactly like them.
Like themselves?
Yeah, very similar to them, okay? Even they've done studies that, let's say a person has ADD, like myself. So they say that how do you know which kids have ADD? You just got to find that one friend group because they all find each other, okay? Yeah.
I don't agree so much. Like, there's certain qualities and certain friends that are so different to me, and that's what I admire.
Okay.
Some may speak up more or be like strong-willed and.
That's not what we're talking about. Yeah, that's not what we're talking about. You have certain, there's certain fundamental things that are driving you, or maybe it's just a quality, like genuinity. Like if genuinity is a fundamental part of you that you feel like when somebody says to you, who are you? And you say, I'm genuine. The chances are your friends are like that also. Okay? Doesn't mean your spouse is not like that. But the majority of Shalom Bayit issues are coming from the fact that the Torah teaches that men and women are completely different. They're different in the way they think about life. They're different in the way they perceive life. They're different in the way they experience life. And even though we sound similar and we can have conversations which might even mimic each other or what's going on inside a man's head and heart, despite what's considered to be modern scientific proof, is actually very different from the other. Not any better, not any worse, but very different. Now, why is that important to know? Because usually when you are together with your spouse, the majority of your time is you're trying to convince your spouse to think like you. You may be doing it explicitly, and you may be doing it implicitly where you're not really trying to, but you just think to yourself, man, if I could just have my wife figure this thing out like I understand it, we would be so good. Or the wife says, oh my gosh, what the heck is wrong with my husband? How many times do I have to hint to him and he doesn't understand what I'm saying? I've even said it explicitly and he still doesn't get it. Right?
Right, she tells me, well, you gotta listen to Rabbi Kalmus' Shiur.
But it's not that simple. It's much more similar, and again, this is a very crude example. But let's say, for instance, you had a horse and you had an elephant. okay? And you said, guys, figure it out. But the elephant is thinking about different things. It eats in different ways. It enjoys different things. Yeah, we both exist. We're both creatures. We both want love, right? We both want companionship. But outside of there, I'm an elephant. I'm very heavy. And my wife is a horse. She makes a lot of neigh sounds, right? Very different. Why is it important to know that? First of all, we have to do something in therapy that they call normalizing it. We have to normalize the fact that, and this is very important, if you have trouble getting along with your wife or your husband on a day-to-day basis, or you have these tiffs, you have these arguments and they keep coming up, that means you're normal. If you guys don't argue, you don't have disagreements, it's not normal, okay? So first off, let's all take a breath. We'll do it together. Feels good, right? It's all good. He's not wrong and you're not wrong. You guys just come from different worlds, okay? Now, how does this thing come together? Because like Noam said, the highest value is shalom, is peace. What did Hashem do? He created the capacity for peace. But how do you do that? And this is the key. Are you ready? You need to have something above you that both of you draw influence from. And it has to be the same thing. Okay? So let's give an example. In this case, this sphere of Keter is the Ratzon of Hashem. It's Hashem's Ratzon, what Hashem wants for us. Okay? Now that is obviously revealed through the Torah. Your thoughts are coming from here if you're a man. And your thoughts are coming from here if you're a woman. That's why it feels like you guys are on different sides of the world when you talk, because you're actually on different sides of the world. What brings man and woman together? Hashem. Only Hashem. Because what is shalom? People think shalom is when there's no fighting. That's not shalom. Shalom means the harmony of two complete opposites. And Rabbi Nachman says that if you find yourself with a person or with people that seem to be very different from you and it's hard to have a good relationship with them, you shouldn't get scared from this, but you should be excited because you have a greater opportunity for peace than if you got along easily. How does that make any sense? The person who's most different from you, who sees things less similar to you, the one who you have no cohesiveness, no energy, no symmetry, no nothing, you guys can have the greatest shalom in the whole world. How does that work? Because to the degree that you're different, to that degree you can actually have what the Torah calls peace. Because peace is the harmony of total, complete opposites, which means what? What would you guys call that in one word? If you have two complete opposites and they find a harmony with each other, what would you call that?
Respect.
Respect, okay, good. What else would you call that?
Integration.
Integration. What else would you call that?
Harmony.
Harmony, good.
Peace.
Peace, very good. I got one for you. Ready? A miracle. And I'm not trying to be funny. It's a miracle. These two things don't go together. You're not supposed to get along. What allows you to get along? A miracle. Who creates miracles? Hashem. Hashem purposely put us in a world in which we need Him. Why does He do that? Because the whole point of being here is to develop and cultivate a beautiful relationship with the one who created us. And therefore we need Him. We don't just need Him in the sense of, oh, I'm religious and I have Shabbat and I have kosher. No, you need Him for Shalom Bayit. You need Him to get nachat from your kids. You need Him to be okay even when you don't. You need Him for everything. Why? Because Hashem made that everything in this world which you need is opposite from you. He is the glue which brings it together. Now, why does that work? Because He's higher than these two. So I'll just give a practical example. Let's say, for instance, my wife feels we should do things this way. And I feel we should do things this way. how are we ever going to get along?
Just do what the wife says.
So yes,
I'm joking.
yes, but also no. Because some men pretend to do that for a long time, and then there's other things going on. So you don't want that either, okay? You want that both should have a space for each other. It's very important. How does it actually come together? It comes together when both of you have an authority that you that informs your decisions, which you hold as being higher than your own thoughts. Does that make sense?
You have common goals?
You have to have common goals. Or, in this case, which is really the essence of this class, you know, if I was speaking to a non-Jewish audience or if I was running a therapy group, I would maybe explain it in a different way. But since it's Rosh Chodesh Nissan, and since we're all together, and Baruch Hashem, we're all of the zchut to be Jewish and be in the land of Israel, I can't really sugarcoat the class. It's really all about Hashem. Hashem has to be the thing. And if Hashem's not the thing, you'll never have shalom between you. In fact, one of the names of Hashem is shalom. There's actually a halachic dispute about whether you can name your son Shalom, because it's one of Hashem's names. And if he ends up going in the bathroom, or you're in the bathroom, you say, hey, Shalom. Then you're saying Hashem's name in the bathroom, which you're not allowed to say. Why is it important to know that that's Hashem's name? To show you that there's no peace besides Hashem. Hashem is the peace. How does he create the peace? So I'm just trying to show the mechanism behind it in a very simple way. It's because it's the only thing that both of you are willing to self-sacrifice for. Because if it's just about my idea and it's just about your idea, we're never going to be able to reach a harmony. Because the truth is, your idea and my idea are equal. And if they're equal, I can't give up on my idea. And neither can you. So even if you acquiesce, even if you go with it, even sometimes you go with me and sometimes I go with you, but still I'm not feeling good about the decision. I'm not happy about the decision. I can't meet you in your place where it because I really feel like this is the wrong thing. Why? Because you guys are coming from two opposite sides of the world.
Well, what about the people from the other side of the world?
Yes.
2 billion Chinese that have no concept of what God is and live in harmony and have a nice, happy life. Or maybe most of the Jews in the world that aren't actually religious live married happily, even though Hashem is not in one iota of their life.
Okay, so we'll start with a couple of things. First,
Or 2 billion Indian people
right. Okay.
that live very happily
So
without God.
okay, so we'll do a few things. First off, Rabbi Nachman explains that the chiyut, the life force of a Jew and the life force of a non-Jew is different. I'm not talking about physical life force. I'm talking about really mamish, what motivates you, what inspires you, what gives you energy, what gives you drive, what motivates you is different. Rabbi Nachman says that the root of a Jew's soul is called emunah. And the root of a non-Jew's soul is called teva, nature. Hashem, emunah, or nature. So in the non-Jewish world, we're talking about a whole different category.
So let's stay with the Jewish world then.
Okay, so we'll start with the Jewish world. So now, I grew up secular. All I knew was people who were either non-believers or conservative or reform. That was my whole life for about 25 years. I went to undergraduate at Penn State. I went to graduate school at UCLA. I traveled around the world. I was with many, many different secular Jews, including myself. I never saw Shalom Bayit in any of those houses. And I'm just being straight up honest with you. In fact, one of the main things, if you ask a Baal Tshuva, many people, you don't know this, most people, when you ask them, what did it for you? You think, oh, it must have been you went to Tzfat or you had some type of spiritual experience. Sometimes that happens. But the majority of Baalei Tshuva will tell you, they went to a Shabbaton, they went to some rabbi in Rebbitzon's house for Shabbat, and they saw the family get along. And they never saw that before.
What, the kids as well?
The kids also.
No way.
Yeah.
Not believing that.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I went to my uncle's in LA, and the first time I was with a religious family, and I said, I want to go back and keep Shabbat because I want my family to be like
That's
that.
right. And I'm telling you,
I did say that.
the majority of secular people, I kept going back the whole first year, even though I thought it was a cult, because I couldn't believe this family actually got along. And I can, I have like a pretty high BS meter. So like, it's not hard for me to figure out if something's going on behind when I'm not there. This husband genuinely respected her wife, not just in the sense that I say I respect you, but that I conduct myself in a way that is emblematic of the fact that I respect you. And it was both ways, right? So this is one element of it. One element of it is that a Jew's life force is completely different. And Hashem makes our life dependent on Amunah. And a non-Jew's life is not dependent on Amunah. It's dependent on Teva. So if they could figure out a natural way to do something, that doesn't preclude them from being able to achieve it. But for us, especially if you want to be close to Hashem, and this is the key, if you want to be close to Hashem, and Hashem knows that, then Hashem will not allow things to work in your life unless you include Him in. If you don't want Him in your life, then He will bring you into the world of Teva, and then you might actually have more success. But you also will lose out on a lot of very precious things in your life. Okay? So, few things there. So now we come back in, okay? Keter means Hashem's Ratzon. So let's say, for instance, I think that we should live here. And my wife thinks we should live here. Okay? We are not coming to the same opinion on this thing. She thinks the house should be white and modern, and I like the house is like dark and dingy like my college dorm. And we want it to come together, and we want it to be the same. And we're not finding a meeting place, okay? How are we ever going to find harmony in this area? If we learn what the Torah says about who has intuition about the place where your home should be, and then in this case you follow. In this case, the Torah says that a woman is much more connected and much more intuitive as it comes to time and space. And therefore, when it comes to physical structures, they have a much greater intuition for where the home should be, for how the home should be. So if, for instance, I learn Torah and I believe that the Torah is true, so guess what? Not only am I going to give in, but I'm actually going to be intrigued at what's going to happen from this, since Hashem told me that actually she knows more about this thing than I do. Well, what about education for the kids?
Amen.
In this case, it's the opposite. Now, if my wife went to school for education and she's an amazing teacher, and my husband is stumbling and bumbling around on computer technology and all these other things, yeah? And now all of a sudden she says, I think we should homeschool. And he says, I don't want to see my kids for 24 hours a day. I think they should go to school. And they start having a whole conversation about it. And what happens? One of you either gives in, or you're fighting about it every day, or both. But if you both have a ratzon, which is higher than both of yours, it's the only one that you're willing to concede to, then in this case, you can have shalom. Why? Because the wife will understand that Hashem gave a greater intuition when it comes to the kids' educations to the husband. Yes?
Can you give a practical example?
Yes.
Like, very practical.
Very practical.
Sorry, can I also add something?
Sure.
Like, do you think times have changed today as we are? Like, back in, many thousands of years ago, maybe that was true. Like,
Right.
Education the man,
Right.
home the wife.
Right.
But maybe things are a little bit different today.
Right, it's a good point. So
Like,
so here's
I might be more, like what you said, I might be more in tune with the education.
right. So thanks. One of the really important things about Torah, one of the foundations of it, and this is why it's in the Rambam's 13 Principles of Faith, this thing only matters to the extent that it's true. And the word truth, emet, is the first, middle, and last letter of the alphabet. Why is it the first, middle, and last letter of the alphabet? Because anything that's true, Rabbi Nachman teaches, is true in the beginning, it's true in the middle, it's true in the end. And if at any point the truth changes, the truth is not true at all. So when it comes to, this is one of the big reasons why people who learn Torah and grew up secular, it's very hard for them to assimilate the ideas because they're looking at it the same way they looked at a social studies book or a science textbook, and they assume that there are times and places it works like this, and there are times and places it works like that because that's how history works. But all of wisdom, which is not from the Torah, which is rooted in this physical world, changes. It all changes. And therefore you have to stay with the times because it's going to continue to change and adapt and elevate and grow, and you should stay with it. However, the Torah, the essence of why it changes your life, the essence of why it brings peace to your life is because it never changes. Now, it doesn't mean that the application of it doesn't change in terms of now we're, let's say, we have to figure out how LED lights work on Shabbat. But in terms of the actual principles of Torah, those principles don't change. And if they do change, that means the Torah is not true. Okay? So that's number one. And that keter, that ratzon, is what brings the husband's ideas and the wife's ideas to a place of harmony. It's this thing that brings them together. And therefore, if one of you is not interested in this, which is okay, everyone has their own journey, every relationship has their own process. You know, when I was with my wife in the beginning, I was a full-fledged atheist, and she was modern, but believed. And then, within a few days, I lived in Ukraine, and I was wearing a shtreimel in Uman. So we had to go through like a big transition where in the beginning, it's like, you know, what's wrong with you? How do you not believe in God? With like, what's wrong with you? Why do you believe so much? You know? So I said, listen, a secular person who does tshuva is not going to end up probably that modern. Because then in this case, like I don't get to enjoy the things I did before in the same way that I did because I feel guilty about it. And I don't actually get to like fully invest myself in a spiritual life. So I kind of like have my feet in both these places and I don't really get to feel the joy of the secular or the religious. So I told her like, I love where you're at and you have your own journey. It's all good. But the chance of me ending up there, growing up as secular, is very unlikely, right? So we all have our own journeys. But ultimately, the only way to have shalom bayit as a religious couple is if you both value Hashem's ratzon above your own. Okay? So that's number one. That brings these two together. And that's why we have 3 lines. These 3 lines represent harmony and balance. How does the harmony and balance come together? It comes all through the middle line. The middle line is peace. The middle line harmonizes these 2 extremes, which is husband and wife. Okay? 2, we have something called da'at. The first time that man has intimacy with his wife, it says Adam yada et Chava. Adam knew Chava. The very first time we see this word da'at, it means to have sexual relations with your spouse. Why is that? Because the Torah is coming to teach you that da'at, knowledge, according to the Torah, is not LeBron James' stat line. It's not some historical fact that took place in Indonesia today. Those all are information. Knowledge, if it's real knowledge, unites opposites. We just said that Adam and Chava are 2 total opposites. How do they yada et Chava? How does Adam know her then? How do they have relations? How do they come together? How do they unite? Through this feature called da'at, knowledge. There was one tree that Hashem said, don't eat from this tree. Now in Kabbalah and Chassidut, they explain that these trees are consciousness. Each of these trees are a different type of consciousness. Hashem said you can eat from all of these trees, enjoy all of them. There's one tree I ask that you don't eat from, the tree of da'at, of tovera. Now on paper, it's like, what is the knowledge of good and its opposite? What does that have to do with each other? But now when you understand that da'at means the unity of opposites, so now I understand. This is the tree where good, meaning closeness to Hashem, and bad, meaning concealment of Hashem, they are united. And when you eat from that tree, when you imbibe from that consciousness, then you are unable to see how you can know other things. To know Hashem, which is an opposite from you, right? He's infinite and we're finite. To know your spouse, right? She's on one side of the spectrum and you're on the other side of the spectrum. To know your kids. And the list goes on and on and on. The feature which unites, according to Chassidut, is called da'at. This is the reason why the Arizal teaches that Moshe Rabbeinu, his soul is rooted in this thing called da'at. That's the reason why before Moshe, we were all floundering in Mitzrayim, which comes from the word meitzar, which means a constriction. We didn't have closeness to Hashem. Comes this figure, Moshe, and he says, guys, it's not far from you. It's so close to you. And they believed him. And they lived the rest of their life like that. Why was Moshe able to imbue them with that? Because he was da'at. He is this ability to unite. Now in our life, what does da'at look like? Because this class, even though it's deep, it's always going to be practical. Otherwise, it's not important, okay? Da'at is the revelation of the Baal Shem Tov's Torah. The Baal Shem Tov received a revelation of Torah from Eliyahu Navi. This revelation of Torah, according to Kabbalah, is a sneak peek of the secrets of Torah that the Mashiach will reveal in the future. In fact, they had a conversations once, while the Baal Shem Tov said to the Mashiach, when are you coming? And the Mashiach said, when your teachings spread chutza, when they go out. And when the Jewish people make Yehudim like you, they make unity like you. These two things are not two separate things. They're one and the same. The Chassidus of the Baal Shem Tov and all of the Chassidic masters is a revelation of this thing called Da'at. A way that I like to explain it, and I've heard this once, is if you're going to the bar, let's say you're me and I was 20 years old and I'm at Penn State, and I have all these self-esteem issues, and I have terrible anxiety because I have an anxiety disorder, and I have a learning disability, and I don't feel good about myself, and so I can't wait to just drink and drink and drink to just put away all my problems and forget about myself and lose myself in the moment. However, I had a problem. The problem was that there was a pregame in the beginning. So what's the pregame? The pregame was where everybody came to the frat house first, and then from there, we then took it over to the bar. So the main thing's at the bar, but the introduction is the pregame, what Rabbi Nachman called the hakdama, the introduction, okay? The hakdama to the bar is the pregame. Walmart, good.
Warm up.
Warm up. Sorry, I need to get my English. Hopefully you guys will help me with my English accent and I'll be able to pick up on it more. Not Walmart. Okay, so warm up. It's a warm up. What's the point of the pregame? It's to get a little bit buzzed so you feel comfortable to get to the bar. Now, where does that alcohol come from that you're having the pregame from? The bar. Very good. It's coming from the bar. So what's the analogy? The analogy is like this. We are very close to Geula. We are very close to Mashiach. We are very close to the bar. However, like Rabbi Nachman says, we're in Hastar Shebetoch Hastar. We're in the darkest time in history, when faith has evaporated, when experience of God has been concealed from us, when not only is Hashem hiding, but he's hiding the fact that he's hiding. So how do we ever get to the bar if we're the least capable of experiencing God in our life? Anybody want to take the analogy and apply it?
By tasting Torah.
Pop up in a bottle of Baal Shem Tov.
You need a shot from the bar. You need a preview of what the Mashiach will bring to the world. What is that preview? What is that shot? It's not the whole thing, but it's a little shot, and it's enough to get us there. It's Chassidut. Okay? Now, I know everyone has their own connection and their own loves and their own ways of connecting the Torah. And again, I have no agenda, and I want you to enjoy whatever you enjoy, and you should learn what you love. But to be able to unite opposites, to be able to know in a way that you actually bring opposites close, not just that you know that Hashem exists, but that you experience it. Like someone once said to Rav Natan's Chavruta, this is Rabbi Nachman's main student. Rav Natan grew up in a Lithuanian family. He was a great Talmid Chacham. He was a great sage. He had dreams of becoming the Rav of his city of Nemerav. And he had no interest in this thing called Chassidus. He thought the whole thing was a crazy cult. Okay? And his chavruta told him, Natan, come, there's Hasidic masters, we can go visit them. He goes, nah, I'm good. He goes, no, I'm telling you, I heard it's very different, but not in a bad way, like in a good way. He goes, nah, it's crazy. It doesn't make any sense. They're happy all the time. It's weird. Okay? We're just going to sit and we're going to learn the Gemara. So the Chavrut is like, fine. And he sticks with them and they're learning every day. And Rav Natan has this gnawing in himself. Like there's something missing, but he doesn't know what it is. But he's not telling his Chavruta because he doesn't want to visit these crazy people. Finally, the Chavruta said, listen, I'm going to visit one. I want to see what they're like. You don't have to come with me, but I'm going. He goes and he comes back. He goes, Natan, you have to come with me. You have to see this. He goes, no, I'm good. This is crazy. He said, Natan, I want to ask you a question because they loved each other. You know, Chavrutas, you love your Chavruta. You really want the best for them. They want the best for you. He says to him, Nasala, listen to me. You believe that God is good, right? And he said, of course. He said, if you believe it, shouldn't you also feel it? And Rav Natan didn't have an answer for that. And he went to go visit a Hasidic Rebbe. Why should feeling come over here? Because da'at is knowledge of the heart. Right? In the Ramchal's classic Da'at Tevunah, it's called knowledge of the heart, understanding of the heart. It's speaking about da'at. Okay? Now it's funny, it's interesting actually. If you look, decades ago, the thing that made you most successful in terms of getting jobs was your ability to have empirical intelligence, right? Intellectual. To the degree that you succeeded in the level of intellect, to that degree you had a better chance to get higher paying jobs, be able to move through the companies, to be able to succeed and thrive. You have a higher trajectory. But recently, there's been a shift. And actually, what organizations are looking for more now than ever, and it's shifting completely, is they're all looking for EQ, emotional intelligence. Why are they looking for emotional intelligence? Because Chazal teach, because we're moving into a time in which intellectual understanding is not enough. You need to be able to experience that which you know, like we say in Aleinu, that you know and you take it to your heart, that Hashem is God above and below, there's none other. So the Ramchal says, I don't understand. Why do you need to know and take it to your heart? Just know it. Because that's not the point. It has to start there, but it has to end here. This is the end. Someone once asked Rabbi Nachman over 200 years ago, how do we know if we're in the time of Geula? How do I actually know? Not just when people say, oh, Mashiach's coming this year, but is there some type of siman that we could see that we can really know, something distinct, unique? This is different. So Rabbi Nachman said, yeah, if you could fly to Eretz Yisrael and you can ask the Mashiach an Eitzah and advice, and you can fly back on the same day, then you know you're in the times of the Geula. This was before aviation. This was over 200 years ago. Okay? So in this case, what is it that's causing his coming? The Mashiach told the Baal Shem Tov, when your teaching spread outside. Why? Because it's not enough anymore to have intellectual knowledge of God. The darkness and the concealment, which is in our homes, which is in our neighborhoods, which is in our schools, which is in our society, is too deep and it's too dense. The emunah needs to hit harder. The knowledge has to get into the heart. That's called da'at. So for anybody here, whatever you connect to, there's a million types of Hasidic masters. Obviously, you guys know my connection comes through Breslov Hasidus. That was the thing which I resonated the most deeply with. But all Hasidus falls in this category of da'at. And there's many different kinds. A lot of people who are more intellectual, they'll learn the Nativ Shalom. Right? They say it's like the Lithuanian version of the Hasidic version of Mesilat Yesharim, right? But Hasidus is what connects opposites. And you'll see that as you learn it, you soften. You soften with your spouse. You soften with Hashem. You soften. Like Rabbi Nachman says, Breslov is the letters Lev Basar. Chazal say that at the end, the heart of stone becomes a heart of flesh. Something needs to soften it. It needs to be very deep waters. It's the waters of Da'at. This brings together opposites, okay? The biggest thing that changed my relationship with my wife was my learning of Breslov Hasidus. There's no comparison. And I know thousands of relationships, and I'm not exaggerating, that were at the depths of brokenness, that whether other people knew it or didn't know it, but I'm going into their homes or I'm having conversations with them, these relationships are on the brink of all ending. And the husband starts learning Breslov Hasidus, and everything changes. Okay? That. Then you have Tiferet. Tiferet is Rachamim. And we'll do these last three quick, okay? Tiferet is Rachamim. Tiferet is compassion, empathy. One of the main things that you need to harmonize opposites or to have peace with your spouse is to have something called empathy. Now, it's very important that you know this. Rabbi Nachman teaches that empathy is a product of da'at. The more that you know Hashem, meaning you experience Him at the way that we were just speaking about, through the lens of Chassidus, the more compassion will be imbued in you. Empathy for your spouse, empathy for your kids, empathy for yourself. It's one of the hallmarks of what Chassidus does to you. Da'at gives birth to empathy. That's why Chazal teach that you can't have rachamim on a person who doesn't have da'at. Da'at gives birth to empathy. The more da'at you have, the more empathy you have. That's why Moshe Rabbeinu was the leader of the Jewish people. Because who is going to be more compassionate than Moshe? That he is the living manifestation of this thing called knowledge of God. This deep knowledge. That breeds empathy. So I'll give you like an example. Rabbi Nachman teaches a Torah in the Quran, and he says that if you struggle with anger, or you have an episode of anger, you should know that the Ruach Mashiach is inside of you. Doesn't feel like that. How does that work? I thought my anger is a huge issue. I'm going to, NA classes for this, and I'm getting therapy for this, and this is like the bane of my home's existence, and I'm crying about it every day. Why can't I stop having these angry fits? Actually, you know who else struggled with anger? All the greatest tzaddikim that ever lived. The Lubavitcher Rebbe, when he was a little kid, they don't only tell stories about when he became a very big tzaddik, but I think when he was a little kid, he threw his brother down the stairs. Okay? Rabbi Nachman, when he was a little kid, he had a terrible, terrible temper. Why do these great tzaddikim have this anger, but yet when you hear about them and you see them, it seems like they're the most compassionate, empathetic people? Because these two things actually go together when you understand it the correct way, okay? Rabbi Nachman teaches that when you have anger, if you can take a moment before you explode, and the thing that you're angry at, you bedavka at that moment, it's going to be really, really hard, and you're going to feel like it's insane and it's crazy, and every part of you is telling you not to do it, but if you try, it's like a muscle, you flex it. You actively try to empathize now with that person that you're angry with. That shift that's going to take place inside of you at that moment, Rabbi Nachman says, that is Mashiach. That shift from anger to compassion. That shift. So I'll give you an example from me. Me and my wife fought like cats and dogs the first few years of our relationship. Like I'm talking about every single day. Besides the fact that we have all these differences, I am very, very, very stubborn naturally, and my wife is equally stubborn, okay? So in this case, plus the fact that I'm very loud and boisterous, and then my wife is Israeli, so it was mamish like fireworks every single day. But the love was keeping us going. The love was keeping us going. It didn't make the relationship good, but it was keeping us going, okay? And then I applied this thing that Rabbi Nachman said. One day, my kids, for the first time since we had them, were my parents. It was my first Shabbat with my wife alone in like years. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's gonna be so great, just me and my wife, alone. We're gonna have ability to talk about things that have nothing to do with our family, and we have that intimacy and like these things that we built our relationship on for years. And I was so looking forward to it. What are we gonna do in this time? My wife's thinking about it, we're excited about it. My kids go to my parents. And what do you think happens as Shabbat starts? The biggest fight we had, I don't know, maybe in a year or 2 years. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, how is this happening? How is this possibly happening? How could we be fighting right now? This is literally the only time I don't want to be fighting. This is the time that we could actually connect, get along. Like, how did this happen? And I'm like, it happened so quickly. It wasn't like there were steps to this where it gradually got intense. It was like in one moment, everything flipped and it got very intense. And all of a sudden, I'm feeling unbelievably angry and my wife is feeling unbelievably defensive. And I'm about to explode. And then I took a moment and I said, Rabbi Nachman says, this is the most powerful moment I could have in my relationship with my spouse. This is an opportunity. Before you act, go sit down on the couch and try to empathize with her. And my teeth are chattering, like everything's, and my suit is getting very tight, and I'm moving down to the couch and I'm sitting down. And this is the first time, by the way, that I was able, even in my life, I think, to be in the middle of what looked like a confrontation, and I just escorted myself to the side. Even that itself was like a very powerful moment, the fact that you can do something like that. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking to myself about this fight. So I'll just tell you, Bekitzer, not the whole fight, but just so you have context for it. Part of when your parents get divorced, and especially when the idea which is coming behind the divorce, at least from one side, is that the husband's not faithful. And then you go out with guys growing up, and you have moments where they cheat on you. So what type of core belief do you think you start to build from that? Men, you cannot trust them. They say what they say, they do what they do, it makes no difference. I cannot trust men. I love him, I'll spend my life with him, I'll give up everything to be with him, but the truth is, I can never actually trust him. And whether she thinks about it like that is a whole different thing. But that's normal. It's normal to have that belief when those are your experiences. Now what happens? What's this fight about? Literally, somebody came up who I haven't spoken to for years, since even before I was religious, who even then, we didn't even have any type of romantic, there was nothing. Since we're little kids, we were just friends when we were like in elementary school. And my wife got so upset when this person came up. And that was the end of that night. That was the end of Shabbat. That was the end of this whole thing. That was the end of me waiting this week for us to do this thing. And I'm like, how are you doing this? How can you do this right now? Just forget about this thing that you have and let's just get along. Let's just have a nice time. It's so not relevant to what's happening right now. But before I did that, I just sat on the couch and I started to think about my wife as a kid. And I started to imagine myself in her shoes. Or I started to imagine myself, my daughter. If my daughter, Chas v'Lila, she saw that in a couple of years her parents separated. And when she starts to understand, her mom every day is telling her that her father left them. And that you can't trust men. And she's attractive, so she starts to date men. And those men either cheat on her or leave her or do things. And that's her whole experience of life. And I started to feel unbelievable pain. Pain. How much pain she must be in. That in a moment, if you could just imagine, we're both waiting for this for so long. And this is the time that we want to have what we haven't had recently. And at that very moment, she gave it up because of this thing. How much pain do you have to have in order to do something which is destructive, even if you don't want that thing? You have to have so much pain. And I started to actually tear up thinking about what my wife went through growing up. And I actually felt for her, that she couldn't help herself because of what she had been through. And I went over to her and I hugged her. And I said, honey, I'm so sorry. That was one of the most transformative moments, not just of our relationship, within myself. And that experience, I can't tell you what that feels like, to go from feeling anger to feeling compassion. It totally doesn't go together. You have to really work. I had to literally pull everything to do it, but it was mama's transformative. That's Tiferet. That brings opposites together. These last two very quickly. Yesod has to do with sexuality, okay? The Yesod actually in Kabbalah is called shalom. It's called peace. Yaakov said to Yosef, I want you to check on the shalom of your brothers. Check on the welfare of your brothers. Mashiach ben Yosef in Kabbalah is called shalom. He's called peace. Why is he called peace? Because shalom, says Kabbalah, comes from the laws of sexuality as they come from the Torah. So here's a very important thing. Rabbi Nachman says, this is bedavka for the husbands, but it also applies to the women. As long as the husband is not keeping the Torah specifically as it regards to sexuality, which doesn't just mean nida, it also means the things that I see, it also means the things that I hear. Rabbi Nachman says your wife is never going to get along with you because you guys are actually soulmates. Not just that like you're destined for each other, but you're actually two halves of one coin. So even if your spouse is not there when you're looking at things or you're seeing things or you're reading things or you're understanding things or experiencing things, she is there because her soul and your soul are one. In this case, if the yesod is compromised, the yesod is what brings you and your spouse together. And not to get too graphic, but the yesod in Kabbalah is the male organ. What is it that brings a man and a wife together? It's that male organ. So in this case, what does that mean for me practically? It means that my connection to the Torah as it relates to sexuality, and I'm not talking about, okay, listen, we all have views about how serious do we want to take Torah, how much do we want it to invest in it, how much do we want it to be a part of every aspect of our life. This isn't a class about doctrine, this isn't a class about religion. I'm just telling you what Hasidus teaches, and I'm just telling you my experience and the experience of thousands of people who I've connected to. Myself included. When I became Shmirat Brit, me and my wife started to get along. Before that, me and my wife never got along. Okay? That doesn't mean that the wife has no responsibility in this area. She also does. But the man has to take tremendous care, not just in keeping it, but in learning about it. What does it mean actually according to the Torah? Not how I grew up with Torah, but what does the Torah actually say about what a married husband's relationship should be with other women? And if you're saying to yourself, well, I don't want to go that far, just ask yourself, would I go that far if that means that me and my wife will get along? And if the answer is yes, then maybe you will go that far. Okay? Last thing is malchut. Malchut is humility. Humility. Shiflut. The only way for two people to get along and to find harmony is through humility. Humility is the backbone of all of it, okay? The only way that there could be change, shift, you guys can harmonize, you guys can evolve. It all starts, begins, and ends with humility. Moshe Rabbeinu was the most humble man who ever lived. It was because of this that he got to connect to Hashem in such a deep, palpable way, and also how you connect with your wife or your husband. It comes from shiflut. Shiflut doesn't mean I don't believe in myself. It doesn't mean I think I'm nebach. It doesn't mean I think I'm nothing. Shiflut means I know exactly who I am, and still, that the Gemara says that a person should be like a reed, like a soft reed, so that like the elements can bend it and move it, and it won't stiffen and it won't keep itself straight. And this will be the end of the class. Rabbi Nachman says that there's 3 levels, okay? There's truth, there's the truth of truths, and there's peace. Peace is the highest. So what's the truth? He gave us an example. Rabbi Nachman says a kid, he comes and he steals an apple from your apple tree. What's the truth? He's chayav, right? He stole from you. He's a ganav. That's the truth. If anybody denies that, it just means they don't believe the Torah is true. But the Torah says that child's a thief. Okay, what's the truth of truths? That Hashem wanted that boy to take an apple from your tree. And Rabbi Nachman says, then there's shalom, which is higher than all of it. The boy is hungry, just give him an apple. Where does that highest one come from? Shiflut, humility. I hope everybody has an amazing new year, since this is the beginning of a new year. I know there was a lot that we spoke about tonight. Take it, think about it, imagine the sides. Think about it in a different way. Take a time where you imagine it in a different way, you think about yourself in a different way, because if you don't want things to be the same exact way than they have been, you're going to have to think about it a different way than you have done, right? And the beautiful thing about Chassidus is, there's nothing I have to say to you to say that this thing is true. This is not empirical science. There's nothing to prove. There's a pasuk that says, taste and see that it's good. You taste the pudding and you tell me if you like it. And if you don't, you keep, eating whatever you're eating, okay? Everybody have an amazing day. Rosh Chodesh Tov, a brand new day, a brand new life, a brand new relationship, Bezrat Hashem. And last thing, be'emet, you have to believe that you can fix whatever is broken. Emunah is the cause of all change. It's the birthplace of all things. It's the Aim Kol Chai. It's the mother of all life. Belief is the beginning of all change. It starts with, I believe that this can change, and then all of the knowledge can help you. But unless you believe it, no knowledge is going to make a difference. It all starts with faith. Thank you guys. Chodesh Tov.